was behind those addictive K-pop songs? Well, today on K-pop Week, we have Elmo Chong with us here in studio. Elmo is CEO of the music startup Sonically. He's also a producer who has worked with K-pop acts like NCT 127 and Rain. Elmo, hello there and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you with us here in studio, especially. Where did this all start for you? What made you interested in producing music and K-pop?
Well, it all started in our high school, Burnaby Secondary School. During that time, they had just opened up a music technology class. My brother and I decided to sign up for it. It was literally a room. The teacher opened the door. He's like, you can make music with that equipment. And just a couple of computers and a keyboard. We just started to make our own music, make beats, make hooks, and then burn our CDs, shop them around to local acts, and lo and behold, people like them. So
you're still in high school at this point.
this was like grade 12, and then we eventually got our music to some local acts that were doing well, like Swollen Members, and that song that we made for them ended up winning a Juno Award. So during that time, we kind of felt like there weren't too many opportunities for us after that. So we decided, hey, why don't we try going to South Korea? And that time, we didn't know how to speak Korean. We were born and raised here in Canada, in Vancouver. And it was just going there was such a cultural, eye-opening experience, kind of like being back in the motherland. And it was just sort of like on that same grind, that same hustle of having these CDs with us and trying to get people to hear our music. And there, at that time, was kind of like a burgeoning hip-hop community. And a lot of these artists that were part of that scene were like us. They came from the States. They came from, some of them from Canada. And they would just get signed to these record companies, get these record deals. And we had ended up giving one of our CDs to a friend who in turn gave that CD to a guy named Tiger JK, who is RM's mentor from BTS. And he loved the music, and that led to one of our songs being placed on his fifth album called 1945 Liberation, I believe.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
It's who you know.
You had the right door open at the right time.
Absolutely.
Okay, where did it go from there?
From there, we just kind of kept on doing that in that scene. So this hip-hop scene kept growing and growing, but it was still considered underground. But there were a few acts like Drunken Tiger and Tiger JK that were sort of like the standout acts, and he had introduced us to other artists within that realm. And we just kept on doing that for such a long time with just some successful sort of releases that we had. But there came sort of like a crossroads where I was a little bit missing home. I was missing Canada. I felt like, there was something inside of me that wanted to return home. But there was just one last thing that I wanted to do, which was kind of get more into the K-pop realm of music. And I had, I just kind of on a whim, I cold emailed one of the A&Rs at SM Entertainment, and kind of not thinking too much of it. Like, if it doesn't work, I'm just going to go home. But then they had emailed me back, and this A&R said that they were working on this new rookies team, so far at that time unnamed, and the two lead singers were going to be rappers. So these two lead singers were named Mark and Taeyong, and so I just started to work kind of like with them at the early stages, and we ended up making this teaser called Basebot. That was released, and it did very well on the internet and very well with the SM sort of fandom. And then, we ended up making the song called Mad City, and then, yeah, so that was my foray into sort of like the K-pop world of just working with them. But it's funny because like all these sort of dots were connecting because I had worked in hip hop so long, and that the group that they were making called, which ended up being called NCT 127,
Right.
was a hip hop based K-pop group.
But it's fascinating to me that it still is such a sensation, even when it's in the original language. But we played a song a little bit earlier this afternoon by Rain. You helped create an English version of a Rain song. What's it like for you, tweaking a song that was originally in Korean for a Western audience to enjoy?
Yeah, that was an interesting experience because it wasn't, K-pop wasn't what it is now. It was just sort of like on the cusp of doing something globally, but it was very much Korea, like in Asia. And then the reason why they made those English versions was for the Southeast Asian audience to start, and hopefully their hope was that it would cross over into North America. But it was very interesting because what happened is like, because a lot of these companies knew that my brother and I were in Korea and we were native English speakers, we were born and raised in Canada, like they approached us with this song and they said, we want to release this version in the Philippines and other areas of Southeast Asia. Can you make a good sort of version of this? And what they had given us was like all of the English lines and lyrics as a direct translation.
Oh, I see.
And
so
some
you
of
have to make some art out of it.
Grammatically was just like, whoa, I
This
don't
isn't
know,
gonna
like, this
work.
doesn't make sense.
Elmo, I want to make
Okay.
sure we have time for some music as well. I just want to hear, generally, how do you feel about K-pop companies now seeing Vancouver as a legitimate place to recruit talent?
I think it's been going on for a while. There's something in the air, something in the water in Vancouver. Guys like Mark Lee, you were mentioning on one of the earlier shows about Kevin from The Boys, and I think in the Korean community, especially sort of like in the Coquitlam, Lohit area, these companies know that there is a hub of talent here, and they actively send scouts to just see what's happening, who's the next sort of talents that are coming from this area.
Well, it's so cool to hear your part in that talent pool as well. Elmo, thank you again so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
That's Elmo Chong, a local producer who went on to make music for some of the biggest acts in K-pop.